is my week 5 assignment for FTH 212-51915. Today's date is April 20th and this is for Dr. Elahi. This assignment is pretty much just a reflection of our experience in the Striker Fire course and what we learned, and to go over some things that we learned with our PSA Dagger that was sent to us. As you can see, I do have the slide locked back. The magazine is empty. There's nothing in the chamber. Just wanted to show that the firearm is clear. Part of the assignment is to use the dagger to point out some areas of concern that we may want to look at if we were inspecting a customer's firearm. I'm going to start with the barrel. Some areas of concern with the barrel, you'll want to check the feed ramp. Now this barrel happens to be black nitride, so it may not need to be polished unless there was issues. The chamber, the muzzle of the barrel, the crown, as well as the inside of the barrel, the rifling. With the slide, you'll want to check the safety. It's good to push the safety and make sure the firing pin protrudes, and then without the safety being pushed, show that it does not protrude. With the frame, just want to make sure the fire control group looks intact. Check the little minor things, the magazine release, slide stop, make sure it doesn't get held up by itself, make sure the spring is active. Those are some things going on the internals of the firearm. You also want to check the trigger itself. Make sure the trigger safety works. Then make sure the trigger pulls. Pull the slide back, let it return. Let the trigger reset. And that's a quick, simple function check that you would do after you disassemble the firearm. Something good to have when the firearm is fully assembled is an armorer's backplate. It's a regular backplate that has been cut in half, and what it does is it only covers half of the slide, so you can see the connection between the sear or the sear engagement. 10 learning experiences that I had in this course. I did not know the Striker Fire platform was first invented in 1893, which was the Borchardt C93. I was not aware of that, and then to find out that the first one that became popularized was the HKVP. I think it was an HKVP9 if I'm not mistaken, and made the polymer frame Striker Fire pistol. And then, as we know, Glock, really popularized it. The full assembly of the dagger was a learning experience because I have put P80s together and Glock clones, things like that, but never did I have to put every individual piece together piece by piece, even to the little wire spring onto the slide stop itself. I never had to do that, so that was definitely a learning experience in itself. One of the biggest learning experiences I had was the sanding stones. Using the sanding stones on certain areas of the fire control group. I was aware of polishing the fire control group, but I was not aware of the benefits of stoning before polishing and how that can affect the overall trigger pull. Trigger tuning is something that was also a learning experience because with the Glock platform and many Striker Fire pistols, many of them have drop-in triggers that can just be dropped in, and then some triggers take some tuning to function correctly with your particular firearm. Another learning experience was slide cuts, the benefits of slide cuts, the effectiveness of them. Some can be for aesthetics and how some are for effectiveness, like to limit the overall weight of the slide, which can change the reciprocation, the speed in which the slide reciprocates. Ported barrels. It's not just about ported barrels, but also learning about how the firearm will require some tuning with a ported barrel. There will be a loss of gases and a loss of pressure produced from the fire cartridge. That will affect the reciprocation of the slide as well, which leads me to the recoil springs, which was another learning experience where you have to change and experiment with different recoil spring weights when you do things like change and add slide cuts to a slide, or add ported barrels or ports, things like that. You may have to do some tuning and experimenting with the recoil springs. I also learned about the overall spring changes in the Glock platform, like the firing pin spring, the safety detent spring, the trigger spring, how all these springs can be changed in different ways to change the interaction and the feel of the firearm. And the biggest learning experience I had in this class was the grip modularity, frame reduction, and ways to modify the grip to make it more suiting for the shooter. With the hand stippling, finger groove removal, trigger guard cutting to add an undercut, adding a ledge for the thumb, a point for the finger to rest so it's not on the trigger. This was the biggest learning experience. I came into this class without any knowledge on stippling, without knowing how to do it, and I did about a week or two of practice, and it gave me enough confidence to go on and stipple my own frame to my PSA Dagger that was sent to us by the school. If there was one modification I would make to my PSA Dagger, I would probably replace the slide to get a slide that was already cut for an optic. Right now I don't have the machining to mill the slide myself, but you know, with the Glock platform and the Glock clones, it's very easy to just get a slide that's already cut for an optic. I will probably do that, and with doing that, I would of course get an optic, some suppressor height sights. The school did send a Strike Industries mass drive compensator that does not need a threaded barrel to be attached. It attaches through the guide rod. I may add that, but a slide that's cut for an optic would be the main thing I would want to do. It's different prices to that because it would just be more so based on the brand and the style of slide that I want. If I wanted to have it Cerakoted already, you know, or just stripped, or a fully complete slide, those things. But it will range anywhere from the $150 area for a strip slide to anywhere to about $300 for a completed slide. For the optic, you can get a good optic anywhere from $150 to $300. You know, there are some good budget optics that don't cost that much that are also effective. So those are the things I would probably do as far as things I would change or upgrade about the firearm. If a customer came to me and wanted some of the upgrades I described, such as if like milling the slide, for example, I think the rate for a milled slide is between the 125 and 200 range in my area. So I would just stay within the local area price range for the most part to do some work like that. Doing trigger jobs or anything like that, I will probably charge for a Glock, if it was just a drop-in trigger, about $75 or something like that. You know, if they wanted the internals polished, that would be another charge as well. But for just a drop-in trigger, about $75 for something like that. And that is something I may also modify. I may change the trigger because I'm not the biggest fan of the safety being, like, I prefer a blade, a trigger blade, a safety blade, as opposed to half of the trigger being the safe part. That's just a small preference, so I may get a drop-in trigger or something like that, or maybe even just change the trigger shoe. But those would be the only modifications that I would want to do to my Dagger. And again, this was a great class for me. Like I said, coming into this class, stippling was always something I wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to do. And when I saw that we were getting sent the equipment to do it, some practice sheets and some time, and luckily I had some frames, some spare frames, old frames to practice on. So to be able to learn how to hand stipple and to get good enough with it in a couple of weeks to where I was confident enough to stipple my own frame on my firearm that was sent to us. Like I said, I can only imagine where I'll be in a few months and even a few years. So this was a great class, a great experience. I came in with a nice knowledge base on the Striker Fire platform and Glock clones in particular, but I'm leaving with a even broader knowledge base. So again, this class was great. Thank you for everything.